Hi, I'm Pranees, and welcome to my show, The Active Hour, where we discuss health and fitness, nutrition, and the blueprint to enhance your vitality. Sometimes a story just doesn't inspire, it transforms how you move. Today, we dive deep into rehab, performance, and the nervous system's hidden power. A physiotherapist and a strength coach with over 20 years of wisdom reshapes lives globally. This one's with Tom Swales. Hey Tom, how's it going?
Good, Praneeth. How are you?
I'm good. Your AMT certification, it's transforming how clinicians help people move from pain to peak performance. What's the heart of this whole mission? And what made you go, this is what I am, this is who I am?
I think it stemmed from both an internal problem as well as a systemic problem. So coming out of the, physiotherapy school, taking
Yeah.
courses and, we were taught what to do, but not really how to do it. We're given all the information. We can diagnose, we can do all the special tests, we can do all the, but we figure out what is the problem pretty
Yeah.
quickly, but we don't know why it's happening there. So, and that's really, at the heart of any injury or pain, it's finding the why. Why did that happen? Right? It's
Okay.
easy to diagnose a
Mhm.
shoulder, neck, radiculopathy. Okay, great. They have some nerve compression. Well, why is that occurring in the first place? And when you start taking that step back and looking at the body as a system, seeing what parts are moving, which ones aren't moving, how is the body distributing forces more effectively or ineffectively, or what's weak, what's inhibited, where's our motor control problem, then you start to figure out the why. And when we're just chasing after the what, people don't get
Yeah.
better. Like you just end up chasing pain, and people get frustrated. They get the ultrasound, they get the manual therapy, they get the needles. Yeah, okay, great. My shoulder feels good. But then they go back and they throw a ball and all of a sudden it lights up again.
Yeah.
Well, is it because maybe they have a nerve impingement? Maybe it's a nerve dynamic issue. Maybe it's a breathing issue, posture, rib mobility, scap control. Maybe it's a core balance issue. Who knows, right? Like until you
Yeah.
look at the body as a system, you don't know why that pain is there. You just know what is damaged. And a big part of it was frustration in my own practice, taking all these courses, getting all these tools to solve specific problems, which are great, but nothing really solved the why. It told me a lot of hows on how to fix problems, at least eliminate some of the pain, but it never showed me how to get rid of it
Yeah.
for good. And the longer I started doing it, of course, I take more courses. I started getting more confused. And now I'm like, I don't know what works for anybody because I've got
Yeah.
100 courses and certifications underneath my belt.
Yeah.
So you just throw your hands up in the air and you're like, well, I'm just guessing. And so starting off as a young clinician of being ineffective and losing confidence to a veteran clinician who's more confused and now losing confidence, I need to organize what I had. I started to look at, well, what are the fundamental principles that underlie all of these systems that I've learned from, all of these techniques that I've learned from.
Yeah.
And when we start to break down the human body into kind of fundamental principal elements of design, which we talk about in the AMT as psychology, neurology, biology,
Yeah.
chemistry, and physics, then it better explains what we do, why we do it, and how to do it better. So now we have these fundamental principles. Anything we learn now can be
Yeah.
better organized. And now we can systematize what we do because the body's designed in a specific order of operations. The nervous system will prioritize what is important to it from a survival perspective. Like you look at how our anatomy is structured. Well, the brain's at the center is encased in this big football helmet. And then you have the
Yeah.
spinal cord at the center, surrounded by a spinal column and tissues and bones. The internal organs are protected by the thorax, right? Anything that, needs to be protected. And then the periphery, you lose a hand, you sprain an elbow, you're not going to die. But anything in the center, something damaging
Yeah.
happens to that, survival is slim. So when we start to look at our anatomy and how we're structured, how we develop, how we learn to move from the ground up, from a top down, center out, then things start to make more sense. You're like, okay, well, if the body is prioritizing its development and its movement in a specific way, why aren't we doing the same thing with our assessment? Why aren't we systematizing and prioritizing what we do as clinicians, so we can find those key linchpins that might be driving the system in the wrong direction and causing these pain or injury areas or overuse problems. So in my own personal practice, I found a way to organize it. Then I started to see, well, how do we create consistency across clinicians in our own practice, in our clinic? So trying to teach people, how to see things a little bit differently, right? To create some consistency in their practice, to get those better outcomes. And then I started thinking, well, how do I package this, make it into a training manual? So I started teaching it live in person. And then we figured out a way. I'm like, well, we can put this into a digital program as well, where I don't have to sit there and repeat myself. We film it once, we create manuals, and then people go through the content, and then we touch base on questions and live scenarios. So it came into a more local problem. And then I looked at it as a systemic problem, because we would get clients from other clinics. They're like, yeah, I was over here and they were looking at my shoulder, my neck, and I've had pain for a year. And when we look at them and we assess them, we're like, this should have been fixed a year ago. And it's because they missed the problem. They missed the why. Everyone's chasing after the pain, and they missed the kind of the root cause or the root driver. And it's something either on the opposite side of the body, up or down the kinetic chain, or somewhere else that's driving that continued dysfunction, creating the pain signal. So I looked at it as, okay, this can be a larger mission to elevate the standard of care, to elevate the standard of practice that is acceptable across clinicians and coaches, so that patients and athletes are getting a better care overall. Because we can all say that every clinician and coach is not created equal, but we can at least maybe raise the bar of standard practice.
Yeah. This is such great information. And we spoke a lot about why you started the AMT. You're a powerhouse in the movement therapy over 20 years as a physiotherapist and a strength coach, founder of what we just spoke about, the advanced movement therapy certification. And you're running Calm Physio Performance Wellness in Canada, working with Olympic athletes and regular everyday folks. That's fucking incredible. What's the spark that you got so obsessed with in order to even start this whole program?
I think it was just this underlying desire in my own personal movement practice, and trying to figure out and understand the body, from a healing perspective, from a performance perspective. So there's an underlying interest in my own practice itself. But again, I think I looked at, various clinics, various systems, and they're either one or the other. It was either, okay, we only do rehab and we get you out of pain. And then they go over and the client goes back to the gym and they start training, and then they get hurt again and they come back. And I'm like, there's a huge gap between, the rehabilitation and the training side of things. And everything's on the same spectrum. It's just different ends. And people aren't finding that bridge between rehab and performance. And with the AMT and the way that we approach things at Calm Physio, we've really bridged that gap between the movement coaches and the physiotherapists to, one, communicate with one another. They understand what each person does at what level of the rehab program, and when to transition them into higher performance based exercises and movements. And that can mean different things for different people. I'll give you an example. So one of my clients, and I just talk about this because he's such a great example. It's not, I'm like, hey, I get to work with this person. I'm very fortunate. Mitchell Hooper, he's currently the world's strongest man. And
nice. Yeah.
He comes in with little aches and pains, but I'm not going to make him stronger. Like, his program has already proved that what he's doing is working. But, you'll get these little aches and pains, little tweaks in his low back, little imbalances that are kind of limiting or hindering his performance, maybe, to get to another level.
Yeah.
So looking at him, he would come in, nothing's damaged, but he's like, I got some right groin, right knee, right low back issues. I said, okay, cool. When he squats, he's kind of shifting everything to the right side. I said, okay, do you know that you're squatting? He's like, yeah, I know, but I don't know why. Well, when we looked at some of his neurology, when he looked at his visual system, his left eye wasn't tracking in, and he couldn't turn his head, like his left neck rotation was limited to the left. So,
I
okay, that's
see.
interesting.
Okay. Yeah.
And then also, he couldn't, when we looked at a single leg balance, when we took away his visual system, he could only do it for 3 seconds. I said, well, that's interesting because his balance was better on the right than the left. So
Okay.
already I
Yeah.
saw this kind of top-down control issue where the right side of his brain, his cerebellum, was firing up more than the left. So in order to kind of sort out some of this overuse on his right side, we went after some visual exercises. We went after some rolling patterns. We went after some neck stability, and we went after some single leg balance control work. And now, then all of a sudden, once we get those dialed in, he texts me the next day. He's like, hey, I just back squatted my personal best for 4 reps with
Yeah.
no pain. I said, awesome.
Wow.
Right.
Yeah, it's fucking
But
epic.
it's cool how like quickly you can see how the neurology. So when you look at those exercises, you're like, well, those are rehab concussion exercises.
Okay.
Okay. But it led to high performance. Right.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So you can't say one is the other. And then you look at the other side of things. We
Yeah.
have little 80-year-old ladies coming in doing deadlifts with kettlebells for,
Wow.
80, 100 pounds.
Yeah.
Well, why are they coming in? Well, they have low back pain. They have crappy
Yeah.
balance. They have leg strength issues. Well, how do we go after all those dysfunctions or all those like movement deficiencies? Get them
Yeah.
deadlifting and put them in an agility ladder, right? Get
Yeah.
their feet moving quickly. Get them on a balance beam. So are those performance exercises or are they rehab? They're both. But it's knowing, it's understanding what tools to apply for the right context on the right person. Right.
Okay.
Because, we look at the world's strongest man. You're like, well, I'm not going to get him deadlifting more weight. It's not doing him any favor.
Yeah.
He already knows how to do that. But if I fine tune him and I find those little imbalances that are throwing his system off, well, now I
Yeah.
just increase his performance, but he wasn't injured. And then on the other side, well, this little old lady who's got balance issues, we're not going to have her sit in a chair and do bicep curls. No, let's go pick some shit up. Let's go get on
Nice.
let's put some stress on the system. And all of a sudden she gets better. So
Nice.
it's
Yeah.
understanding where people are in the spectrum of rehab performance and what they individually need is the key thing. But in order to do that, you have to look at everybody relatively the same to see what pieces are missing. And this is where having a system and an algorithm to move through to find out what pieces are missing for every individual. Because when you look at those fundamental principles of psychology, neurology, biology, chemistry, and physics, they apply to everybody. They don't change, right? And if we are working from first principles, well, then it gets a little bit easier to find out what every person needs, because then you don't miss all these important pieces of information specific to them. And we're not assuming because we're doing a better job assessing.
Yeah, I completely agree with you because balance is key. I'm someone, when we spoke, I told you, I'm someone who works out every single day.
Yep.
But one of my biggest dreams is to have a pain-free body. I have pain all over my body, my lower back, my knees, name it, everywhere. And then recently I injured my ankle too. I'm like, fuck, this is like an icing on the top.
Yep.
So
But did the ankle sprain occur because of
yeah,
dysfunction?
I twisted it when I was running with a group of friends
Right.
3 weeks ago.
So you stepped inappropriately.
Yeah,
So
I
you
stepped
placed that
inappropriately.
foot. It's not like you
Yeah.
stepped on somebody's foot in a base.
No. Yeah,
playing
I
that.
think
Right.
I stepped on a curb at something.
Okay.
It just happened a split second.
Gotcha.
And generally too, I have my balance is not that good.
Sure.
So I'm trying to fix my form and all that. But yeah, we'll talk more about
Yep.
all the pain and everything. But before that, I want to go back into your early days. Let's take it back to the beginning. Growing up, what's that one memory from your childhood that shaped who you are today? Something that hits you when you think about it.
So I would watch all kinds of sports growing up, and not for long periods of time, but I was always fascinated on copying what they did. I was a kid, Gen Xer, watching all the Van Damme movies and Bloodsport and watching how he does the splits. So over time, I forced myself how to do side splits so I could kick a 6-foot dude in the head if I wanted to. And, I remember I was probably 9, 10, 11. It was the Summer Olympics, and I was watching the men's gymnastics floor routine. And I was watching how they would run, round off, and do continual back handsprings across the floor. And I thought, well, maybe I can try that. And I broke it down in my head enough to figure it out. And I went out into my backyard. I took a sprint. I did a round off, and I did 6 back handsprings. Just by myself. Yeah, just on the grass. and they weren't pretty, but I figured I could break it down in my head and feel it out enough that I could that I could throw them.
Yeah.
And from then on, I had this interest in like, watching all the ninja movies and watching all the gymnastics, like doing that stuff intrigued me. Like anything parkourish, anything
Yeah.
gymnasticy, flippy, kicky, that stuff to me was awesome. But I didn't have any discipline to want to go and get formal training. I just wanted to copy and do it.
Okay. Yeah.
I grew up playing soccer and basketball and snowboarding and, all those things, everything except hockey. Probably one of the few Canadians that don't play hockey.
Yeah, I was about to ask, how come no hockey?
Yeah, I can skate. I can skate okay. I can skate enough
Yeah.
where I can play shinny, but I never grew up playing hockey. But thinking back, and then watching athletes move, watching people move, and breaking it down in my head enough to understand it, and then do it myself to feel it, brought in a greater level of understanding on how to not just do it myself, but then repeat it and teach it to others. So I think that's what really accelerated my learning in this field of, rehabilitation performance, because everything I watch and do, everything I watch and read, I perform it myself so I can feel it and understand it. So I have a deeper understanding of how this applies to the human body. Something like a Turkish get up, right? There's you can say there's 7 different positions or postures, but I also teach that movement to some of my total hip replacements who can't move their hip past 90 degrees because it's contraindicated. So I teach them an efficient way to get up and down off the floor, which is a Turkish get up. So I found that ability to take this performance exercise with a kettlebell to a rehabilitation perspective as a strategy to get to and from the floor for certain individuals who are limited with their hip mobility or limited with their spine. But they need to get to and from the floor. So it's also making those connections of, when we are looking at high performance things, how does that relate to lower level activities or from a rehab perspective, but then also taking some of the things that we take for granted, like standing on one leg, and why that's important for running and sprinting and all high performance.
And you mentioned about the ground level, and you're someone who believes the movements from the ground level, right? Could be, like you just mentioned, sitting up or the 90 degrees one. Tell us a little bit more about why you are so engraved with the basics.
Yep. So let's start from the ground. When we are born into this world, where do babies first learn to move? From the floor. Crawl, roll, right? Even before crawling, they're on their they're on their back and moving their arms and legs. They're doing dead bugs, right? They're setting their slings. They're getting their neck reflex stabilized, and then they roll over, and then they're on their stomach and they press up, and then they figure out enough strength that they can get their spine suspended, and then they start rocking, and then they start crawling, right? So we lose this relationship with the ground because we don't go there anymore. And then people fear the ground, if they fall. And they don't know how to manage gravity at that point because they stumble, they don't catch themselves, they're not strong enough in their legs. They don't know how to then absorb forces through their body, and all of a sudden they break a wrist, they break a hip, they dislocate a shoulder.
Yeah.
But the best way, at least from my experience, is, well, if we want to prevent some of these injuries from happening, it's reestablish a relationship with the ground again. Go back to where you learned. Practice rolling around, rocking, crawling, in all kinds of, every single one of my professional athlete, everybody in general, I have them crawl in a various way in every single workout because I want them to kind of reset, reconnect the body, get the shoulders, the proprioception up, the spine, everything kind of stacked. Because when we crawl, you can't cheat your posture. You have to maintain some level of core control in order to crawl effectively. And if the core gets sloppy or lazy, crawling doesn't happen very effectively, but we can hide and we can cheat that when we're walking and running because we're so efficient at it, right? We don't see the trunk is rotating or the hips kicking out because we can accomplish the task because we're very good at compensating. But you take somebody back down to the ground and you watch them crawl and you start to realize, oh, you really suck down there. That's probably why this running thing is not going well for you because you need to crawl before you run. And it's a prerequisite.
Gotcha.
But if we go back down to the ground and we establish this relationship and increase proprioception, being on the floor also improves mobility in our back and our hips and our spine, all of it. So it's a nice place to reset, our structure and our nervous system to kind of get it ready for some of these more advanced things in standing.
Yeah. And because we spoke about back pain, if I were to ask you, what are the top 2 or 3 exercises or flexes for lower back, which I think
Mm.
majority of us struggle with?
Yeah.
What would you say?
Well, I mean, it depends because we want to know what is the cause of your back pain. So you'll see, I've seen a few people online and they're like, do this cobra pose, do this sloppy push up.
Yeah.
It's the best thing for your back. I said, if you have a stenosis, it's the worst thing you can do. Right. And
Okay.
then you have somebody
Yeah.
doing cat camel and flexing their spine.
Yeah.
This is the best
Yeah.
back exercise for you. Not if you have a disc herniation, it's not because those are
Mhm.
two
Yeah.
different injuries and they can't tolerate extreme flexion. One can't tolerate flexion and one can't
Yeah.
tolerate extension. So it's understanding what's contributing to your back pain. Is it hypertonic tight hip flexors? Is it weak glutes? Is it weak core? Is it,
Okay. Let's say, when should I come and see you? You're talking about it. Let's go back
if you've been
and
trying
see.
stuff,
Yeah.
say you've been
Yeah.
on my YouTube channel and you've been trying all
Yeah.
the shit, right? And
Yeah.
nothing's working. You can't figure it out.
Yeah.
Come and see somebody
Sure. Yeah.
to find out why. There's lots of things, and you can people. There's lots of information out there to troubleshoot, and I encourage people to try stuff. But if you're getting sharp,
Right.
electrical, referral, no matter what you do is making it worse. Yeah, get it assessed like now, or else, because you don't want that pain to continue to create compensations and decondition
Yeah.
the body. So find out why, so it doesn't become a bigger problem. But for the most part, I mean, take an 80-20 principle. 80% of what we do is going to work for most people, right? And
Right.
if you go back to fundamentals, if you go back to basics, again, go back down to the ground, do some crawling, do some dead bugs, do some glute bridges. For a lot of people, that's going to take care of their low back tightness. But
Yeah.
their low back's not tight because it's tight. It's probably because the low back is toned, because that's
Okay.
the muscle that the brain can feel. Maybe because it lost the abdominals, maybe it lost the glutes, maybe you've overstretched the hamstrings. So there's lots of things that can contribute to it. It's just,
Sure.
what we feel is what we fire, right? Because if the brain can feel that tightness, it's just like, well,
Yeah.
I know where those muscles, I'm just going to keep using those to get the job done. But it might be the wrong
Okay.
strategy because it's lost
Yeah.
the feeling of those other muscles that should be contributing to the body or to movement. So I can't
Yeah.
give you a best 3 exercises for low back pain. I apologize
Yeah.
to your
That's okay.
listeners. But try something.
Yeah.
If it's helping and it's sticking, you probably found the right thing. If you're doing something and it's not helping, do something different. Go a different way. If you think that a muscle's tight and you keep stretching it, but it still feels tight, please stop stretching it. It's probably not tight. It's probably
Okay.
weak. Maybe try some strengthening around it first. So like you got a tight hamstring. Instead of doing hamstring stretches, maybe do a single leg deadlift or some hamstring bridges to try and bring tone back into it. Because oftentimes muscles feel tight because they've been overstretched, right? Even right now, as we sit in chairs, and we stand up, oh, my glutes and my hamstrings are so tight.
Yeah.
No, they're not. We've been stretching them for the last 25 minutes because we're
Yeah.
sitting. Maybe we do some deadlifts and some glute bridges and bring some shortening and some strength back into them. And all of a sudden, they don't feel tight
Yeah.
anymore.
Feels good.
Counterintuitive because you don't think, but we provided what the body and the nervous system needed. We needed to add control back into the system, not length and mobility. So this is where try something. If it's not working, try something else, do something different, maybe the opposite. And if you can't troubleshoot it, see a professional that will help find the problem of whatever you're feeling.
Sure. Yeah. Everyone who's listening who has a back pain or lower back like me, hopefully figures it out. So I want to go back to the little Tom. If you go back and talk to the little Tom, knowing everything that you've gained or everything that you know right now, what would you tell him?
Keep exploring, keep experimenting, keep being curious, ask questions. Don't, if something doesn't make sense, don't just take it for truth. Find, I'm always a why guy, like if someone says, oh, well, I heard you're not supposed to do this or take this. And I'm like, why? Oh, I don't know. Well, then that's not good enough for me. Like just having a statement saying, you shouldn't do this. I'm like, I need to know the mechanism. I need to know the under reason why. Right.
Gotcha. Yeah.
And, asking those deeper questions are going to just always give you better answers. So I think that's what kind of got me to where I am today and also I've never been content with not knowing or having a better answer to something or a better solution for someone's problem.
Yeah.
So that would drive me to go find those answers and those solutions to help more people.
Yeah. Very inspiring. And I want to talk a little bit more about building the AMT certification.
Mm.
You've built the AMT certification into something game changing for clinicians and coaches. Take me back to the early days. How did you transform the idea
Mm.
into something reality?
Yep.
And then when did you realize like holy shit, this is going to work?
Yeah. So I think my approach, it's always been in my head, right? I've
Yeah.
always been kind of experimenting and when I'm working with clients, a lot of my clients, I was just trying different testing techniques. And when I saw this
Yeah.
consistency kind of show up, and then I'm like, when I connected the foot and the ankle to the hip, the hip would turn off.
Yeah.
But when I isolated so in our kinetic chain muscle testing, I'm like, oh, this is a foot problem. And then I would do strengthening for the foot and the ankle, and all of a sudden the hip tightness or the hip pain would go away.
Yeah.
So
Nice.
I would experiment a lot, and it gave me better answers and better exercises and better techniques in which to treat. And when I saw it consistently showing up with a majority of my clients, I'm like, how do I, and the results that they're getting, were quite quick.
Yeah.
How do I replicate this? Right. Because, the clinic started with just my wife and I, and we built the clinic just on my reputation and in
Nice.
Barrie.
Yeah.
We, from right off the hop, I had a 6-week waiting list. So we were very
Yeah.
fortunate that way. But it took me a few years to build up the reputation for that. But then, the more clinicians we hired, the expectation at that facility was, oh, I come here and I get better. How do we create that consistency across clinicians? So, we struggled for quite a few years, first 5-6 years, because we would hire new grads. They would last 6 months because, they weren't catching on fast enough. We would hire,
Yeah.
a couple veteran clinicians. We were lucky early on who were exceptional. So that helped us grow. But then we would hire, a veteran clinician. They had some bad habits and they weren't getting the results. They would be gone in 6 months. And I'm like, I need to organize what's up here, onto something that I can share. And that's kind of where the AMT came from. One of my professors, actually at my
Yeah.
university, Dr. Dave Walton, he, we stayed in touch, and he reached out to me one day. He's like, I love what you do online. He's like, have you ever thought about creating a course? And I said, actually, I would love to do that.
Nice.
So he
Yeah.
had a course that he was teaching. He was teaching as, at Western still. And he helped me kind of develop the outline and the objectives and all that. And then we launched it.
Yeah.
It was a live, right? We did live in person for the first 2 years, and then COVID hit. And then we figured, like, well, what if we pre-record this? Because at that time, my wife was not interested in it at all, because that meant I was gone every weekend teaching a course. She's
Yeah.
like, I want nothing to do with this.
Yeah.
I said, okay. And then she's like, can we record this and make it an evergreen? I thought about it at first. I'm like, no. And then I'm like, yeah, we can do it. So then we brought in a film crew for 5 days, filmed everything
Nice.
level 1, level 2, professionally done. The manual level 1 manual went from 100 pages to 350 pages. Level 2 went from 100 pages to 250 pages. So because I wasn't teaching it live anymore, I couldn't ad lib because it was very point form. And I literally had to write out, which took another year and a half of
Improvise
writing.
it.
Right. But it's done, right? So
Yeah.
that's our training manual
Yeah.
for every single clinician coming in. And, for fellow colleagues of mine, clinician owner or clinic owners, they still run into the same problems. They're trying to I got to get my clinicians up to speed. I'm like, have them take this. It literally organizes everything that they did in school. so that it's more effective, and you can get them up to speed faster, and you get them effective really quickly, and you build their confidence. So we looked at this like, this can go now international, because we don't have to be just in North America. We can branch out everywhere.
Yeah.
So now it's become this bigger project of, we can elevate the standard of care globally instead of just internally and locally.
Right. And then how did you end up scaling it to the international audience too?
We're still in, well, it's getting it out there, the messaging, the marketing,
right. Yeah.
Educating, speaking at conferences, starting my own podcast, all of this, it's building relationships, right? Like constantly putting value out online on my YouTube channel, on my Instagram, to show people how the system works, how the exercises work, how it can solve these specific problems quite quickly. And it's really relationship building.
Nice.
It's adding that
That's
value.
very inspiring. Yeah. And you've worked with pros like the Canadian men alpine ski team and the Pan Am Games.
Yep.
What's the coolest thing that you've learned from these elite environments that shaped the AMT system?
There is a high level of expectation from everyone all the time. The athletes. So we'll talk about when I was with the developmental team, the Canadian Alpine Ski Team. You're on the road 8-9 months of the year, and you wear many hats. It wasn't like this, we're flying on planes and we're flying to Switzerland and we're going to Germany. No, it's like fly to Frankfurt, get a cargo van, throw all the athletes in one van, throw all the equipment in the other, and now we're going to drive 4 hours to Austria to our home base, unpack everything, set up the ski room. Okay, Tom, you're the physio. Now have to treat all these athletes before tomorrow to get them ready.
Yeah.
All right, now I'm at the start gate. Right. Yeah. I'm the starting coach. So I'm getting radioed from the coaches. I'm sending them down. I got to carry their stuff down. Okay. So I'm on the hill all day when they're training. So it's, you're up at 5 a.m. With the coaches in the dark, setting a ski course, right before the sun comes up. And then I'm up there till, 1, 2 in the afternoon. And then we come down, and then we have lunch, and then maybe we have some downtime, and then it's, treat them till dinner. So, and then you do it, and then you do it all over again. So you have to wear many hats, which was great. It was a learning experience. You're in tight quarters with people. You have to learn to get along with people. But and the travel was great. Everyone, the connections that I made with the athletes and the staff, it was a great experience. I'm glad I did it when I was single. And didn't have any, I did it pretty close to out of school. So didn't have any tie downs. I had no house, just left my stuff at mom and dad's, and all right, I'm on the road for the next 9 months. But I still stay in touch with them. They bring me on to work with certain athletes if they're having problems with them. So it's great. Pan Am Games, that's another story. Like, amateur sport is not professional sport. I'm going to tell you that. The level of organization, the ski team was very well organized. When I worked at the Pan Am Games, at the stadium, super fun. Again, it was a good experience. I got to work with a lot of different people. But again, we have to realize that amateur sport is what it is, especially in the back. It looks good on the surface, but in the background,
but not on the background. Right?
Let's just call it what it is. But it was an overall lots of learning experiences and lots of great people to connect with. So we have to just roll with the punches and be, you got to be adaptable. That's, if anything, I'm going to say you have to be adaptable, because races get canceled, events change, people get sick, staff don't show up, or, there's no athletes. You just have to be like, okay, well, this was the plan, but the plan has to completely change. So I would say, if anything from working with teams and events is just be adaptable, and don't set your mindset in this is how it has to be, because if you think that everything's going to run smoothly, it's going to drive you mental.
And what's that one thing that you did differently with AMT that kind of made you stand out in this health and wellness field?
So it's really a framework to build more knowledge on top of. So we have all these tools to help solve specific
Yeah,
problems and pain and manual therapy and exercises, which are great. I have lots and lots of them. But what it is it's a framework to build more knowledge on top of, understanding these fundamental principles of design. And then it's a system or an algorithm in which to assess people, in which to prioritize, know what we need to treat in specific orders. And it takes you through it pretty
sure.
quickly. The more I see things, everything is an algorithm. And when you look at these experts who can just look at somebody and know exactly what's wrong, they went through an algorithm in their head. They did all these clinical predictions very, very quickly, all these calculations, and they got to that end result.
Yeah.
And you're like, how did you get there? It's because they went through an
Yeah.
algorithm and they practiced it so many times that they are very easily and quickly could get to the problem for the patient and see, and then all of a sudden it looks like they're magic. So what the AMT is, it's an algorithm, and it's a standard algorithm that works on everybody. But you will hit these forks in the road of, okay, we hit to the neurological system. Okay, we look at structural neurology. Oh, you know what? They had some past concussions. We need to go look at the cerebellum and the functional neurology over here. Clear that out. Okay, that's all clear. Oh no, we actually have a vestibular problem. Okay, oh, it's a cranial nerve problem, right? And then we go back into, okay,
Yeah.
well, how are the parts moving? What's the muscle testing? What's passive range of motion doing versus the active? What's the hip doing? What's the back doing? So you quickly start to move through the body, through the system, and find
Yeah.
where the forks that you need to kind of pay a little bit more attention to, or at least you've gone through the information. You're like, okay, I've cleared this. It's not a problem. I can move on. Because a lot of the times when people assess, they assume that certain structures aren't relevant because it's not close to the area. Meanwhile, they could be very highly contributing to that problem, especially when it comes to the nervous system.
Yeah. That's so dope, man. And you've been talking a lot about the framework. So let's
Mm.
get in a little bit more into the framework.
Yep.
And you talk a lot about the power of fundamentals. Right from the beginning,
Yep.
you've been emphasizing about psychology, neurology,
Yep.
biology, chemistry, physics. What's that one fundamental that you swear by that's transformed and how you approach this framework that you've created?
I would say out of the five, it would be neurology, because
Okay.
the nervous system controls everything. We have a saying at our clinic, everybody's neuro until proven otherwise.
Yeah.
Somebody comes in with shoulder, elbow, tennis elbow. Do you know how many times we find nerve issues with that? Or there's some kind of,
Yeah.
you check their myotome, you get their
Yeah.
neck to extend, and all of a sudden the myotome shuts down. I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, we have a tendonitis issue. The tendon started
Yeah.
breaking down, but it's because the nerve conduction was impeded at the neck, right?
Yeah.
So, and what conducts pain? Well, nerves do. Well, where is pain perceived? The brain. So when it comes to chronic pain, when it comes to, and where's movement performed? At the brain. It has to formulate. It's got to
Yeah.
figure it out. It's got to feel it out. So everything is neurology. And once we start understanding that the nervous system controls everything, it's a master system, then it becomes more clear as to what we need to treat first. So the nervous system, if there's nerve issues, we got to treat that. If it's mechanical, yeah, we still have to treat the mechanical problems. If it's a joint, soft tissue, whatever. But again, are we adding the right inputs? When we treat that specific body part, the nervous system is going to determine whether it feels safe or not. So I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
Spinal manipulation,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
People, they go get their chiropractic, they get
Sure. Yeah.
the joints popped. And people who have had a positive experience, have had
Yeah.
relief from it, they're nervous. They believe that it's a very good tool. People who've had a
Sure.
bad experience, not so much. They're like, oh, I'll
Yeah.
never had a bad experience. Okay, so
Yeah.
so what are the two things contributing to that? Their belief
Yeah.
system, right? Which is
Correct.
then controlling their nervous system. And manipulation, needling, whatever it is, if we start to look at what those actually are, it's inputs. We're altering inputs in the body. We're altering sensations and feelings in a specific body part. And if it's a positive, if the nervous system perceives that as positive or safe, it improves mobility. All of a sudden, it takes the brakes off. It reduces tension. It improves coordination. It organizes more effectively. If we apply an input that's undesirable or unsafe that's perceived by the brain as one of those two things, what happens? It guards, it protects, it creates tone, right? So now the
Yeah.
nervous system's like, oh, I didn't like that. So now it does the opposite effects. Part of that is belief, and part of that is how the subconscious is perceiving that, and it's the subconscious is part of that nervous system. So when we understand a little bit more effectively of what we're doing from a manual
Yeah.
therapy perspective, it's all inputs, right? Can we apply a stress or an input to the body that has a positive effect or a negative effect? And when we look at the nervous system as a way to communicate to the body of what it likes or what it doesn't like or what it feels safe or unsafe, well, then it's going to guide our assessment and our treatment. So if we apply, some simple inputs to the neck and all of a sudden they can touch their toes, right? All of a sudden, oh, my back pain's better. Well, we just
Yeah.
applied a simple input to the muscles on the front that released the muscles on the back that also sent a signal to
Okay.
the low back, and all of a sudden we got better mobility. It's a form of communication. All of a sudden, oh, we did something right there. If we apply an input and all of a sudden their movement got worse, we went in the wrong direction. We
Okay.
need to back up from that. So we can use pain as a signal, as a form of communication. Most people don't want to get more pain. They're not
Yeah.
going to
Yeah.
trust you if you make them worse. But if I get them to move better with a couple of simple techniques, and all of a sudden they're like, oh, my pain's gone down and I move better. Great.
Yeah.
Now the nervous system said, oh, you did something right. Let's keep going down this path. And now what we've also affected is the psychology of the individual, because they're going to feel safe with you. They're going to trust you, and they're going to, have more buy-in as to, okay, yeah, we are going in the right direction. Right.
Yeah.
So the nervous system, once you start getting into the nervous system, then the other components of chemistry, biology, and physics, they get a little bit more clear on how to create changes, how the body adapts, and then also how injuries occur.
And how can we use these inputs to increase the healing? You're someone who's emphasizing too much on the nervous system and the neurology, right? And how do you think this is often overlooked in the traditional training?
I think we focus too much on the mechanical and the physical body, right?
Okay. Yeah.
When we just look at the body as just this collection of parts, and we don't see it as
Mhm.
this integrated system where everything affects everything else, then we don't appreciate that something as simple as, stubbing or slamming your finger can affect the shoulder mobility, right? Like you can do
Mhm.
something simple to the
Yeah.
body. If it's noxious enough, it will create this systemic response. You
Yeah.
stub your toe, it's going to change. It sent a signal all the way to your brain, but now that stubbed toe has changed how your quads are firing up, how your glutes are
Yeah.
firing up, how your core is firing up, because it's made its way. And with walking, you're going to walk a little bit different. And
Yeah.
understanding that, yeah, you stubbed your big toe, but the big toe is so important for gait that it's now changing everything above it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that pain signal is causing enough discomfort to make you compensate so that you don't create more pain. Because what is the nervous system's primary job? Don't die, avoid pain, look for safety.
Yeah.
So if we have to walk with a limp for a period of time while that toe heals, well, that's great, because that's a survival mechanism.
Yeah.
But if the toe's healed and I'm still walking with a limp, that's not good, because
Yeah.
it's going to create, uneven force distribution across the body and maybe some overuse problem someplace else.
Yeah. Yeah. And then the same thing I mentioned, right? I've sprained my ankle pretty badly, and
Yep.
I'm still struggling to walk properly. Sometimes I forget, and then walking fast,
Yep.
and then that shooting pain triggers, and it just triggers my whole body. I'm like, oh my god, fuck! It's
Yeah.
just that one small thing. And why is it not confined to that specific area? And it's very different. If I hurt my
Yep.
arm, it's not
Sure.
going to it's not going to give me that whole jitters to the body. But why is that my
Because
pain in my ankle? You just mentioned
because
that
the
some foot.
ankle and
Yeah,
the foot were
yeah,
bipedal, right? And you're loading onto that tissue.
yeah,
So
yeah,
walking at a slow pace, you can manage those forces effectively. And then when you start
yeah,
picking up the pace,
yeah,
there's now an increase in forces coming through the tissues. The nervous
yeah,
system is saying, "Oh, I don't feel safe with this. I'm going to increase the signal for you
yeah.
to slow down again because the tissues aren't ready, or
Okay, yeah,
this doesn't feel safe yet." So it's trying to protect you at
okay,
that
okay,
point. It's
yeah,
trying to protect the tissues.
yeah,
Now, until you start to train into it and get those tissues strong again because they've been damaged,
Yeah.
right? That takes some time. If you sprained a ligament, 6 to 9 months, right? What we
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
Muscles,
Yeah.
6 to 8 weeks for adaptation. I mean,
Yeah.
the ankle will feel better within a couple of weeks, and you can probably start doing some slow jogging, but it's going to take some time for it to get adaptive again to allow you to bounce and push off of it with
Yeah.
enough force that you want, that it's going to say, yeah, we're okay for running now. And if it's not, it will tell you because it'll dampen your power and
Yeah.
it causes a limp because that's the nervous system saying, I got to put the brakes on. If I let you put too much force through this, we're going to cause some damage again. It's not ready.
And you also mentioned in the beginning that anything that relates to spine is very dangerous. Explain a little bit more about that neurology. Why certain parts of my body, if I break them, I can still function, but
Mhm.
anything related to that main part, it's very scary. And how can I be very cautious while lifting, while doing any sort of exercise? Because
Yeah.
sometimes when I started lifting, I wasn't too cautious. I was just lifting, doing
Yep.
a lot of deadlifts, squats, and then suddenly I realized, okay, my body's saying, dude, calm the fuck down. It's too
Yep.
much.
Yeah. I
So,
mean,
yeah,
if you deadlift with
yeah,
too much of a rounded lower back, you're putting
yeah,
stress and strain on the ligaments and the discs.
yeah,
For the first couple lifts, you're like, yeah, it's not too bad. But you do that enough times and the
yeah,
body starts to, get a little bit upset at you because it's not in the ideal posture position. The nervous system will start to, again, it will start to scream at you. It'll
yeah,
either create discomfort, tightness to say, you know what, we did something wrong. Let's do it better next time. Or we're not ready for the stress yet, or we've added too much load too quickly.
yeah,
And the position or posture will set up the pattern, and the pattern will dictate your power. So what I mean by that is if we lock up the spine, for example, for a deadlift, and we
hmm,
brace and we engage our lats with the bar and we grip the
yeah,
ground with the floor or grip the ground with our feet and we engage the glutes and our neck is nice and relaxed, we can lift the bar relatively easy because everything's connected, right? Everything's in this kind of ideal posture. But if I disconnect the shoulders, I don't ground with the feet, I'm not braced, and I just lift, well, we just
hmm,
leaked energy everywhere. And
yeah,
oftentimes, because the spine is our center of gravity in that lower back, everything shears through that lower back.
gotcha, yeah,
Okay. Same thing with the squat, kettlebell swings. Again, where our center of gravity is just above the pelvis, it's a big torsion point. And we have to be able to manage and move forces across the body effectively. But if it's moving too much or we have poor control of that center at that center axis, then energy leaks and we
yeah,
start to move into those tissues. And the nervous system is going to tell you pretty quickly, you know what, we need to back off this because if we damage the center of gravity, this area of center of gravity where a lot of forces come into, we're not really good for survival.
yeah,
So it will dampen that power to protect itself. And again, anything from the center, we developed as babies from the center out. Babies are on the ground. They're developing strength here first before the periphery, right? They're spending
right,
a bunch of time on the ground developing these rolling patterns, developing these slings, developing these, quadruped positions because they're developing their center strength. And then when there's enough center strength, the nervous system says, oh, okay, you know what? We can come upright now. We're organized and we can manage enough forces here that we can now sit upright, we can stand, and we can now walk.
gotcha,
So we're organized again from the top down, center out. We develop strength from the center first before the periphery. And when we shift that force development or that strength and control too much to the periphery and the center axis is lagging behind, it
yeah,
really creates a lot of disorganization in the nervous system because that's not how it developed. We need to be stronger in the center first before the periphery, or else we
gotcha,
get tight low backs and pain issues along the
yeah.
spine.
And what are those areas that one should be very cautious about? You spoke about spine, you spoke about the peripheral area. What are the other important areas that one should be very cautious about?
I mean, we don't. It's not necessarily being cautious.
Yeah,
It's understanding limits, understanding a little bit of people's anatomy, what's appropriate for them, either due to past injury or current injury, if
yeah,
there is any. Um, how to load. So, you look at certain athletes like gymnasts. They do this
yeah,
this curl called a Jefferson curl. right? When you
Right.
look at it, it looks like a very sloppy deadlift. Well,
Yeah.
they don't start with 225 pounds like that. They build up. They do a dowel first. So they slowly load the discs and the tissues and the ligaments over time, over years, before getting to any significant loads. But because of their sport, it needs them to be strong in that fully pike position, that the back, the low back, the discs and the tissues and the backside, they need to have that flexibility and strength in that long range. So you could say, well, a Jefferson curl it would be terrible for somebody with a disc issue. I 100% agree. But
Yeah.
if you train them over time to get the tissues to adapt, to be strong in those positions, it can be very good for your back. I do Jefferson curls. Do I do them when the back is irritated? No, I don't. Right? That's dumb. Why would I load my
Yeah.
spine in that extreme flexion when the ligaments are already pissed off at me from doing a sprint workout the day before, or doing gymnastics from compressing it? It's just not an ideal strategy.
Right.
So it really depends on, even with necks, people are like, oh, I have tight necks. And then I get
Yeah.
them to do an isometric,
Yeah.
and all of a sudden, oh, it's not tight anymore. I'm like, just because you look down all day,
Yeah.
these muscles were weak in that range. So therefore the nervous system said, I'm not going to let you go there. And then all of a sudden you apply some
Mhm.
control here, and it
Yeah.
stretches this and it strengthens the backside. So it
Exactly.
depends. And we just have to load tissues and joints in their anatomical ranges gradually over time. Because
Yeah.
the more variety, the more you can load the body, the more options you have. Because if you fall or you get caught in a precarious position and you're not strong there, well, shit can blow up, right? Like that's when an injury happens. But if I train the shoulders in this outstretched here and I'm doing all kinds of supports and whatnot, if I fall, I know what to do because I have that good relationship with the ground and my joints are strong in this position, right? So we need
Yeah.
to train in various different ways in all kinds of different positions, because the more variety that we have or more options that we're strong in, technically the more resilient we can become.
That's something that I'm still working on to have more better balance, have that all round of the body movement because I'm
Yep.
confined to triathlons and just
Right.
doing weightlifting. You've worked with numerous Olympic athletes and regular folks with chronic pain. What's the biggest myth that you've seen in the recovery and movement field?
The biggest myth that I'd say the biggest myth is rehab and performance are separate from one another.
Yeah,
And I think we touched upon that early on,
you're right. Yeah,
talking about those two different individuals. One's considered rehab and the other one's performance. And I'm like, yeah, but the performance exercises were the rehab, and the
yeah,
rehab improved performance. So I think where people get lost in, they silo themselves into only understanding this lane. And I'm not saying that they have to cross over into other people's lanes. Like
yeah,
when I work with strength and conditioning coaches, they do all the tracking, they do the metrics, they do the vertical jump tests. I'm like, great. I don't like tracking that stuff. You guys do
yeah,
that stuff. Take care of the programming. I'll fine tune over here, right? So I think where people they fall short is not understanding how it's a spectrum, and how performance and rehab, they work together, but it really depends on who the person is in front of you.
yeah. And I want to talk a little bit more about your personal side. This isn't just a system. It's you. And what's the one memory that you feel very nostalgic about whenever you think about the framework that you set up, the whole course and the whole system that you set up for the AMT?
From a nostalgic perspective,
Yeah. Whatever
for
that comes, a memory that lights up, that makes you feel happier, makes you feel nostalgic.
I think I think when we finally wrapped up all the filming and
Okay.
I finished the manual, it was one of that. It was the okay, like we've created something awesome here that
Okay.
this can help a lot of people, and now we just got to get it out to everybody and let them know what it does and how it can
Yeah.
help them. It's a continuum. Like we just keep hitting these different milestones of in the AMT, and how much we can grow it and what can expand to, and doing conferences and like an entire what are they called? Not a seminar, but a summit, right? Like
Yeah,
like the AMT summit or something along like movement summit, something along those lines
sure.
to kind of bring in
Yeah,
like-minded individuals to kind of continue to grow and expand on things. It's, that's probably the most fun part is the learning never stops, and always looking at different ways to do things better is probably a better a better answer to something in the past, but more looking towards the future.
nice. And you've had a near death experience where just 20% chance of survival rate.
Mm.
What the fuck happened and how did you recover from that?
Yeah. So June 2023, I was admitted to the hospital with sepsis, stage
Yeah.
3 sepsis, toxic shock. I very quickly went into heart, liver, kidney failure, lungs full of fluid. It was an invasive streptococcus A, like sore throat type of
Yeah.
bacteria, got into my bloodstream and started shutting things down pretty quickly. Then my
Fuck.
my
Yeah.
my toes went black. They thought I was
Yeah.
going to lose limbs through flesh eating disease. Yeah, it was 10 days ICU, dialysis because I had rhabdo, so my body was liquefying all of my muscle tissue, and it was putting a lot of strain on the kidneys. They thought I'd be on dialysis forever.
Yeah.
Um, After 7 days of that, they got me off the dialysis. After 10 days ICU, back into the rehab, had to have ankle surgery because the infection seeded itself into my ankle. But yeah, I literally I had to learn how to walk, do everything on my own again. They don't know how it got in. I think maybe it came in through a sinus infection, worked its way into my spine. I have no idea.
Yeah.
But yeah, every single um, doc that was on my team, they all said the only reason you're still here is because of how healthy you came in.
Yeah.
And I asked one of the docs, who was one of my main physicians, kind of jokingly, I'm like, Doc, what were my odds? He's like, oh, less than 20%. I was like, oh, I was
Fuck.
sick. He's like, you were
Yeah.
super sick.
Yeah.
And he shared with me that 4 other people around my age came into the hospital that summer with sepsis from a strep A infection, less stuff going on. They didn't make it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I was one of 5 at that hospital that made it through. And yeah, it was, my journey after on trying to heal the cells and the tissues. Basically, I had to put my money where my mouth is with the AMT,
Yeah.
utilizing those principles but then having an amazing team around me to, work on the inputs and work on the body to get it going in the right direction again. Yeah. And then all the support from the family, like that's how I made it through. And this unrelenting need to, get back to where I was and to learn from that and to be better. That put that fire under my ass. And, I didn't know, like, I thought I was just super sick. I didn't know it was,
Yeah.
a near death experience, which was probably helpful. So, in that case, ignorance was probably more on my side
Oh shit. Yeah.
than knowing too much.
Yeah. Well, sorry that you had to go through it, but I'm very glad that you fought and you came back and you're doing everything that you're doing right now.
Yeah.
And
Thank you.
how did that recovery happen? I know you use AMT.
Mm.
Top 3, if I were to ask you, what
Yep.
is those most important top 3 things that you were very strictly diligent about and probably helped you faster?
Yeah. Consistency every day. Like,
Okay.
I did whatever I could do. When I first got home, I was still on antibiotics because they had to keep me on another month of antibiotics, like intravenous. So very, very hard antibiotics.
Yeah.
Whatever energy I had, I'd walk outside with my crutches. I would walk with my walker. I would go to my gym equipment outside and do, like 10 push-ups on the bar. I
Yeah.
would, whatever I could do, I did it. And as much as it hurt, because my body hurt every day, it hurt to move, it hurt to wake up.
Yeah.
It hurt more to not do anything. So the pain of losing everything that I built, from a health perspective, hurt more than the physical pain. So
Mhm.
that consistency and that discipline that I created around this is what I do, this is who I am, as opposed to this is something I have to do.
Yeah.
It made it that much easier, right? And then, so I didn't need motivation. because I created discipline and priority around that. And then I created consistency in my day. So if I'm going to say three things, I would say consistency, priority, and discipline.
Yeah, very inspiring. And if I were to ask you your proudest moment of all times, would it be this, or is there anything more sensational than this that you're very proud about in your
Oh,
whole journey?
like finding my, my life partner, my wife,
Yeah,
my partner in crime, my
that's
best
so
friend.
sweet. Yeah,
I mean, that's like it. The businesses would not be the life that I have is far greater than I ever imagined because of
yeah,
her. And
gotcha.
then of
Yeah,
course our children, the business that we created together. Like there's so many things. Getting through my sickness together. She was
yeah,
there morning, day and night. Um, there's a lot of things to be proud of and grateful for, and it's easy to lose perspective because we're always like looking to do more, and that's just how
yeah,
we're wired, right? But we do step back, and we look at where we live. We're like, this is awesome. Like, we live here. We have this amazing team. This is the business we built. There's yeah, it's pretty awesome.
nice.
There's a lot of things to be proud of.
Yeah, so sweet. So you've turned AMT into a movement empowering clinicians worldwide. Early days, what's the biggest win that you've made that you believe until now?
The biggest win in the AMT. Um, Seeing those apply it and have tremendous success, right? Like super quick. Watching the clinicians and the coaches
Yeah,
go through the program and how it's changed their clinical practice, how it's changed their perspective, their outcomes.
yeah,
That's, for me, like that's the biggest one for sure.
gotcha. And I think from our conversation, I kind of realized that you are someone who emphasizes more on the mastery versus the mediocrity. And
Mm.
why is that? And how did you develop this holistic approach to look at why and go more deep than just stick to the problem?
um, when looking the body's a system, everything's a system, and
Yeah,
learning from my mentors on how they viewed the body, either from an energetic perspective, from a traditional Chinese medicine perspective, from a fascial mechanical perspective. There's all these different lenses you can look at it from. So, and the way that we even move as human, nothing's isolated, everything's integrated.
yeah,
And it wasn't for me, it wasn't good enough to just look at the parts and just treat the parts. Like there was no satisfaction in that. The results were mediocre at
yeah,
best. I'm surprised at how some of my clients even got better early on,
yeah,
thinking back to what I did. But you know, for someone who, like, I've always strived to just put my best foot forward, and you know, living a life of mediocrity, regardless of what it is. People are paying you lots of money to help them. You better put the best product forward, and that's the way I look at it. Is if people are coming to me for help, I need to do the best I can and be as exceptional as I can for them.
yeah. And you also emphasize a lot on recovery ever since we started talking, right? How important? I know recovery is very important for muscle building, but how much is that, and why is recovery so much important for muscle building? Example, I can see you're jacked,
Mm.
and obviously, obviously, there's a lot of recovery and movement that goes to it.
That's
Uh,
I mean, recovery is the key thing. Exercise is very simple. It's a stress on the body.
yeah,
And then the body has to now recover and adapt to that stress. If you're not recovering from that stress, you cannot put more stress on the system, right? And the faster you can recover, the more stress you can impose. So therefore more adaptation can occur. So especially as we get older, we don't recover as fast as we did when we're younger. So recovery needs to be more dialed in. Our sleep, our nutrition, our hydration, our mindset, all of these are stress. Plus, as we get older, there's more stress on our plate. There's more responsibilities. There's more things that we have to account for, which is, again, it's adding to our stress load. So if we're not managing stress, regardless of what it is, the nervous system responds the same way. So if you have a fight with your spouse and that jacks up your nervous system, that's the same as you just went for a 10K run. It's a stress, right? You shifted cortisol, you shifted hormones, like the nervous system is going to respond in the same way. But if you can't downregulate quickly, well, that stress is still in the system and your body's still breaking down. So as soon as we work out, we want to quickly downregulate. We want to quickly, the faster we can move into recovery mode, the faster we can start healing and building the body back up so that tomorrow when we train again, the body's ready for more stress. But if you're already, you haven't come down very far past that stress threshold, it doesn't take much to push you over. Well, now you haven't added enough of a stimulus to cause more positive adaptations. So if we get that stress down far enough, great, we can load, and then all of a sudden we get here. Okay, great. Now the workout's done, but you got a lot more volume, intensity, and frequency done in that session to cause more progress in the direction that you're looking for. So recovery is critical. That's where muscle's built. Muscle's not built in training. Muscle's built in the recovery.
So when you say recovery, is it just where recovery as in besides sleep, besides calming your nervous system down, how important is it to take a complete rest day off? Do you ever take rest days off in general?
I never do. So it's going to be relative to the individual. Someone who is very trained, who has lots of years of experience in training, who can manage higher stresses, their recovery is going to be a little bit different, right? They can probably go for a long walk on their recovery day. They can do yoga on the recovery day. Someone who's very deconditioned, right? They go do a workout, full body workout of resistance training or circuits. And then next day they're crushed. They need to do like nothing, right? So it depends, but we call it active recovery. You just don't want to add more stress to the system. If you're going for, you did a hard training session on Monday and then you're going for a light jog, 10K run on Tuesday, and then you're doing another heavy resistance training. I'm like, if you're not adapted to that, or your body didn't recover within that time frame for the next resistance training session, then you didn't recover. Like you shouldn't have done so much on that day. So it depends on the individual. Elite athletes, because they're so well trained, they can add in more active recovery in days. And it depends on the individual. Some people just need a complete day off because their anatomy, their DNA, their physiology requires that so that they can perform at their peak. Some people.
Do you ever take days off? Do you take a complete day off from exercise, or
I'll always stretch or foam roll or get on the floor. I can't not do anything.
Me too.
For me, it's like go do yard work for a couple hours, work in the garage. Like I'm always doing something. It's never like let's just sit here and slug out. But I'll get my training sessions done earlier in the morning, ideally, and then everything else through the rest of the day, it won't interfere with my training. So if I leave my training till later in the afternoon, well, I've already spent, because whether, mental fatigue or stress or emotional or whatever, like that compounds through the day, that I find that usually interferes with my training. My intensity is low, my energy is low. But if I get my training done earlier in the morning before the stresses of the day got in there, I'm actually better. I can manage those stresses more effectively. And because I've finished my training, it's not interfering with my training. But I always tell people, I'm like, whatever works best for you. Me, I'm an earlier morning worker-outer. Once it gets past like 4:00, I start to peter off pretty quick.
What time are you waking up generally?
It varies. Some days I'll be 5:30. Like earlier in the week, I'll get up earlier just because I'm better recovered from the weekend. But as the week goes on, it might be 6:30, no later than 7. So it depends. Good. I'll try and listen to my body, and go with that. But I aim for my 7.5 to 9 hours, depending on the stress of the day before.
Nice. Yeah, I can't function if I sleep less than 8 hours.
Yep.
And so, my coach has been begging me to take a full day rest. I'm like, I just fucking can't. It's not that mostly towards the body. It's just I just love to exercise. If you ask
Yeah,
me,
yeah,
yeah, if given
yeah.
a chance, I would just exercise
Yep.
whole day, have fun,
But
but I just
if
can't do
you,
it.
like
Yeah,
I'll take Sunday completely off and I'll just putt around the
nice.
house and just do whatever.
Okay.
And because I'll right now my training is I'll go to
Yeah.
gymnastics on Monday. So there's an open
Okay.
gym and I bounce around and flip around there.
Yeah.
If I train, if I get this inkling to work out or even just kind of like do some resistance training on the
Yeah.
Sunday, Monday sucks. Like
Yeah.
I don't have the power. I don't have the pop. I
Okay.
get fatigued. So I
Yeah.
have to be disciplined to take that Sunday off if I want gymnastics to go well for
Gymnasium.
me. Right.
Nice. Yeah.
So, it is, but you also get that, like, I can't wait to train because if you do a day off,
Yeah.
how much more motivated are you the next day to really go after
Next
it?
day.
Right. So it's a balance. And I find I have to be more disciplined to take time off than to actually do the work. Because if I push
Gotcha.
too many days, then I'm crushed by day 3 or 4. And I'm like, I just feel
Nice.
terrible, especially as my body's still recovering. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Very nice. Well, I don't think I can do it. I've tried last weekend to just take a complete day off on Saturday.
Yep.
Uh, once evening hit and I was going nuts. I'm like, fuck, I can't do it. And then I just go do my bike just for fun.
Yeah. So you did some
Yeah.
light cardio, right? Like some zone
Yeah.
2.
Yeah.
That's
I
fine.
did
Yeah.
the cardio.
That's
Yeah.
just getting your body moving and blood
Yeah.
circulating. You're not stressing. You're not lifting heavy
Yeah. I'm
weights.
not
You're not,
stressing too much, but
right. Yeah. So
there's a lot
like,
of emphasis that if that I have to, in order for me to build a little bit more muscle,
yep.
I have to apparently. I was just over my coach, and then
Mm,
I was just a couple of my friends have saying, "Dude, you're just working out too much. You need to calm down." So then
that's
that's
true.
when your
Yeah.
muscle will go on.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because you're adding too
yeah,
much stress and cortisol
yeah,
staying too high.
yeah,
Cortisol staying too high,
yeah,
it suppresses growth hormone,
yeah.
testosterone, all those stuff, right? So again,
Yeah,
this is
even but
where
your light bike or a light
that
uh,
shouldn't interfere with it.
swim shouldn't interfere, right? Yeah,
No,
that's one thing.
it shouldn't interfere with it.
But yeah, so we spoke about young clinicians working for you. There might be some of the young clinicians listening to this. If they have a dream of setting up something like AMT, their own
Yep.
AMT, what's the first thing they got to do to make this real? And what is your advice to young entrepreneurs getting into or wanting into set up something in the health and fitness?
It's so if they're looking just to do something similar, like set up their own course,
Yeah,
you got to have time in the field. You have to experiment. You have to have a true understanding. There's, you gotta be in the trenches to truly understand and know what you're doing is working, and then organize and systematize it into a usable format that's transferable and teachable across clinicians and
sure.
coaches. So you have to have a true understanding of what you do and a process that you can
Yeah,
actually replicate. If you can't do that, then it's just going to be a bunch of random information that you're throwing out there that means nothing to nobody. So that was one of the main things that I had to do was I had to take what was up here and put it into an organized format that people understand how my brain works or how I saw things. So, and that's
gotcha.
hard for that can be very difficult for a lot of people. And it took me quite a while to figure that out. But again, I had to distill it down to fundamental principles, frameworks, and a system that I could build from.
Yeah,
Right. And then for
yeah,
those
exactly. And yeah,
who want to like from an entrepreneurial perspective,
yeah,
um, know that you want to do it. If people believe in work-life balance, don't become an entrepreneur because
yeah,
that's your life. Like
yeah,
if you want to do a 9 to 5 and have weekends off, don't be an entrepreneur because there's no days off. Um, and I would strongly urge, like in our clinic, those who have more aspirations to kind of go beyond just a clinician, and we put them into
yeah.
management. So they manage a team. Okay, great. How do you like that? Great. Then we'll put you, like, we have levels of leadership
Gotcha.
that people move through. And if they're like, you know what, I don't want to own a clinic, we're like, great, at least we know now,
Yeah,
right? Because they got a taste of what it's like to manage people, like all the operations. And a lot of people don't know what it takes to run a business, a successful business, right? Where
yeah,
everything runs. It took us, like we're on year 13. And, I was probably not until I got sick in 2023,
Yeah.
we realized, oh, what we built, it kind of works without us because our staff stepped up. They ran the operations. We have leadership in place. We have systems to train. We have hiring, firing, right? We have everything in place. So that's where we realized that, what we built is sustainable. But it took a long time, and it was a lot of time in the trenches for the both of us to figure that out too. And
Yeah.
for entrepreneurs, if they're looking to open their own clinic, I would partner with somebody who's done it already. If someone
Gotcha.
has the framework and the systems in place and the training and the protocols and all the stuff, well, that saves a lot of time and headache of trying to figure that out and create it on your own. And
Yeah.
if that clinic or that business is easily reproducible, we can just pick it up and just replicate it someplace else. And people can also create their own business inside of a business, right?
Hmm.
Work with your employers of like, hey, how can I create more value in this business? I'm going to create this. I want to create this whole other division. I want to create this. Great. Like somebody comes up to us and like, that sounds awesome. How can we support you? Right.
Very true.
So, when it comes to entrepreneurship, we don't have to run out and be like, I'm going to go open my own brick and mortar and this, that, and the
Yeah.
other. And like, you can do that within a business. And, if that's something that you can grow and create, well, the people that are there to support you will support you because it adds value to their business as well. And then that you can create partnerships that way.
Very, very great information. And one last piece of advice that you would give to anyone in the health and performance coaching section, because it's something that's very hard to stand out and there's so
Yep.
much of competition. How
Yep.
can someone stand out?
I mean, you could do the strategy that a lot of people are doing where being very controversial, if you want to
Okay.
do that. But to
Yeah.
me, you're like, okay, well, are you creating arguments? Or are you just creating sound bites so that people come in? Just add value. I mean,
Yeah.
if you come in and you're solving somebody's problem and you're adding value, they're going to come back and they're going to trust you.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
and you didn't sell them anything, and you're not trying to sell them anything. You're like, look, if you want to go deeper into this, there's more information over here. If not, just keep hanging out here, and hopefully I can continue to add value into your practice or your life or whatever it is.
Perfect. Yeah. Such great advice. And before we close out, a quick rapid fire. Neck pain or shoulder pain?
So necks are pretty easy. I mean,
Yeah.
the neck is pretty, you know,
Okay.
you got neck
Yeah.
pain. We either create space, we create stability, we get mobility, needling it. Shoulders can be a little bit trickier because the shoulder is
Yeah.
the most mobile joint and a lot more things affect it. You can
Hmm.
have elbow wrist issues that affect the shoulder. You
Yeah.
have a neck affecting the shoulder, ribs, breathing. So shoulders, I actually have an entire shoulder webinar that
Gotcha.
I talk about kind of all these pillars and how to work through that. Um, but from a treatment perspective, necks are much easier.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Rehab or peak performance?
Both the same thing, different spectrum, different end of the spectrum, right?
Manual therapy or movement therapy?
At the end of the day, everybody needs to move, but the
Hmm.
manual therapy will help reduce pain quicker. So we
Gotcha.
can use those tools like lacrosse balls in certain areas, but I can release a muscle much easier if I can stick a needle in it and get that to release. But then I need to apply the right inputs in the form of
Gotcha.
proper movement strategy to actually make sure it stays permanently like that.
Gotcha. Yeah. Well, it's been a fucking blast talking to you, knowing all your journey. You've come a long way from training the ski team to amateur to Olympic teams and creating this great AMT framework for all the clinicians. What are your next goals from here?
Next goals. Well, we have our second location opening up hopefully this summer. Um, we've got new AI technology coming in from Switzerland. We're super excited to
So
partner with
awesome.
them and create
Yeah.
create protocols with them. So that's going to be great. Um, yeah, it's just right now. It's just keep plugging forward, provide value and education to those who are open to receiving it, and enjoy time with the family.
That's nice. Well, Thank you so much for everything. It was so nice talking to you.
You too.
And I hope you still continue to transform many, many lives.
Perfect.
Hey, thanks for tuning in to the Active Hour podcast. We hope you loved the episode. If you did, please give us some love in the reviews. Guess what? No ChatGPT was used in the making of this episode. Until next time, bye!